Welcome back to my channel. Today's case happened in France. A model marriage and the unexpected disappearance of the wife, a distraught husband, and a shocking ending. But let's start from the beginning. It's Saturday, March 16th, 2013, when 40-year-old Didier Barbot, who has a farm in the village of Vritz, France, Department of Loire-Atlantique, goes to the police to report the disappearance of his wife, Anne Barbot. Anne is a cashier at a supermarket in the nearby town of Candé, and Didier has just received a phone message that his wife did not show up for work at all that day. The man is extremely concerned. At the police station, he gives basic information. They both got up early as usual, and this morning was no different. He went to care for the livestock, and the last time he saw his wife was at 6 a.m., when she had breakfast. She was about to leave for work. The news that she didn't get there took him completely by surprise. Something must have happened. Anne is a responsible and reliable person, so he, as her husband, asks that the police act as quickly as possible. Officers ask Didier a few more questions, then summarize the main findings. 38-year-old Anne Barbot left for work first thing in the morning in her Peugeot 306, taking with her a purse that contained her EC card, checkbook, and cell phone. She didn't make it to the supermarket, hasn't given a sign of life since, and her phone is turned off. According to the reporting party, there was no argument between him and his wife. The previous evening was also completely ordinary. They both ate dinner. It was a tart with meat and vegetables prepared by his wife, then watched TV for a while. Around 9:30 p.m. he went to bed because he was tired. Anne went to bed not much later. Didier stresses that the two live in harmony, and his wife had no reason to leave him. On the contrary, a much-awaited moment is about to happen. They will become parents. Although they cannot have children themselves, after Anne gave birth to a stillborn daughter in 2006, they are in the process of finalizing the adoption of a baby boy. Anne has been looking forward to adoption for a long time, so it would be absurd to assume that she left home of her own accord. Since both the information about Anna's conscientiousness and reliability, and the fact that the Barbot spouses live in harmony, with the fact that they actually received approval for adoption, are confirmed, the officers take the case seriously and immediately start acting. The case is being handled by the Angers police. Investigators take into account both the fact that something bad happened to the missing woman and the fact that Anne may have left her husband of her own free will after all. Many years of experience have taught them that victims' relatives, if not lying, are often unaware of various things that have taken place. So, as a rule, it is worth keeping a distance from their stories. Also, Anne Barbot may have had some reasons, unknown to anyone, for leaving her husband, so this version cannot be ruled out. Anne's husband, however, does not wait for the results of the police work and immediately organizes a search operation. Later that afternoon, dozens of cars arrive at his farm. They are friends, neighbors, and extended family members who want to help him search for his wife. Anne and Didier grew up and were raised in this area and have family and friends here. As a couple, they are well liked, so it is also for this reason that so many people are coming forward to help. Didier tries to coordinate the search, assuming that the first hours after the disappearance are the most important. As part of this effort, the approximately 7-kilometer route from the house in Vritz to the supermarket is first thoroughly searched. Friends and acquaintances walk along the road, checking it, knocking on the doors of all houses, searching empty buildings in the area, looking into pits and manholes. Nowhere, however, do they come across the slightest trace. They all ask themselves one question: how is it possible that a grown woman suddenly disappeared along such a short route that she knew very well? It's getting dark. The search is getting more and more difficult. The husband of the missing woman comes to mind. He provides a photo of Anne and her car and asks the mayor to help print large color posters about Anne's disappearance for the next day. Later that night, Didier and his friends hang dozens of such posters on store doors. 2 days later, they will be hanging on almost every pole and building in Vritz. Didier is heartbroken because there is still not the slightest trace of Anne, while the police, in his opinion, are too little involved in the search. Didier wants to put pressure on the investigators, and 48 hours after his wife's disappearance, he rallies friends and acquaintances and organizes a demonstration in front of the post in Vritz. Many people take part. They hold information banners and photos of the missing woman. Didier also pulls journalists from the local media to the site. In front of the cameras, he talks about the fact that he and his friends have searched the area in a 25-kilometer radius over the past 48 hours and are relentlessly trying to find Anne. The footage is broadcast on local television. Didier's effort and dedication are very impressive, and thanks to this, more and more people become involved in the case. If anyone around him still had some doubts at the beginning, for example, whether things were really so perfect between the couple, they no longer have those doubts now, seeing Didier's fear for what is happening to his wife. 3 days after Anne's disappearance, someone finds an insulating shoe insert with fur trim in a roadside ditch about 400 meters from the Barbot couple's home. The find is immediately reported to the police, and Didier, who is called to the station, recognizes the piece of clothing as having been worn recently by Anne. This clue gives the investigators something to think about. Anne may have lost the shoe insole during her escape, or a tug-of-war with her abductor. Although at first glance the kidnapping theory seems unlikely in the case of a supermarket cashier, however, police already know that Anne sometimes took home the keys to the safe or the store's cash register. Perhaps robbery was the motivation for a potential kidnapper. A day later, on the other hand, a cyclist finds a checkbook belonging to Anne lying in the grass by the side of the road, about 10 kilometers from Vritz. Several checks are missing from the checkbook, and it appears to have been stolen. However, could there be a robbery motive? The investigators decide to search the couple's house. They want Didier to accompany them. After all, he knows best where his wife keeps various items. Maybe they will find something that Anne's husband overlooked, such as a letter or traces of a fight. Maybe it will turn out that something else was lost. Didier is eager to help. In fact, when the police search the closet, the man notices that his recently purchased new sports bag is missing. Also missing are a jacket that belonged to his wife and a fleece sweatshirt. Maybe Anne packed up and left of her own accord after all. Using specialized chemicals, the police also search throughout the house for traces of blood, but find nothing. From the laboratory come the results of tests on a shoe insole and a checkbook. Only Anne's DNA was found on these items, no other traces. Days are passing. The investigation is at a standstill. The whole case is extremely shocking to the small community. 38-year-old Anne, leading a quiet and orderly life, has disappeared, as if she had sunk into the ground. Those close to the missing woman can't get over it. Didier is constantly resentful of the police. He believes that if the investigators had been more involved, they would have discovered what happened to his wife. Wanting to publicize the case even more, Didier organizes a memorial march for Anne to pass through the town of Candé. The man rallies all his friends and acquaintances, urging them to invite their families, acquaintances, and neighbors. People are eager to get involved because this march combines various goals. It is a protest against violence, also a protest against alleged police inaction, besides, of course, to draw attention to the case of missing Anne Barbot. On Saturday, March 23rd, 700 people will march through tiny Candé. One gets the impression that all the town's residents have taken to the streets. At the very front walks Didier, holding, like many of the marchers, a poster with a photo of Anne in her car. The man is exhausted, his face clearly showing the stress and fatigue that has become his lot in recent times. Didier is surrounded by friends who are carrying huge banners with the words, "Missing since March 16th, and if you suspect you have any information, please call." Footage showing the march makes its way into the national media, but unfortunately, this does not translate into concrete results in the investigation. However, on March 28th, 12 days after Anne's disappearance, something takes place that is, in itself, a breakthrough in the case. On that very day, late in the afternoon, the police receive a call from a man who claims to have seen a car possibly belonging to the missing woman in the woods, 17 kilometers from Vritz. Officers immediately arrive at the scene. Deep in this extremely dense forest is a clearing, and there is a car, or rather, its burned wreck. The color and model match. They also managed to read the letters and numbers on the number plate. Indeed, it is Anne Barbot's car. A specialized forensic team called in proceeds to examine the interior of the car. Everything there is burned out, and no traces can be found. On the other hand, attention is immediately drawn to the fact that the driver's seat is pushed back. It was certainly not Anne who drove the car last. As her seat was always pushed against the steering wheel, the car was driven by someone much taller than her. Specialists are getting ready to open the trunk. Suddenly they notice that through the holes that have formed after the rear lights burned out, they can see that something is inside. After a few moments, they are almost sure what it is, and immediately call a forensic doctor. Indeed, inside the trunk lies a burned human corpse. The fire has consumed them so severely that it is not clear whether the victim is a woman or a man. The doctor finds that it is impossible to determine even what color the person's skin was. However, a gold ring is found in the trunk with two names engraved on the inside, Anne and Didier. One can now be almost certain to whom the remains found belong. The corpse is taken to the university clinic in Angers. A CT scan shows that there are no shell casings or any metal objects. It is therefore apparent that the victim was not shot. There are also no traces indicating that death was caused by a sharp instrument. The doctor is unable to determine what caused the death. The victim's skull does have a number of small cracks, but the damage could have been caused by both force and heat. DNA testing manages to confirm the identity of the corpse. A comparison of photos of the victim's teeth with photos from Anne Barbot's dental records also shows a 100% match. These are the most important findings for now. The results of other tests will have to wait a little longer. The prosecutor's office launches a murder investigation, and Didier learns that his wife's corpse has been found. The husband has a breakdown, almost fainting. When he recovers, he informs that it is better for the police to catch the perpetrator first, because if the perpetrator falls into his hands, he, Didier, will not vouch for himself. In Fritz, news instantly spreads that Anne's corpse has been found and that she has been murdered. It's a small community, and this news immediately creates an atmosphere of mutual distrust among the residents. Suddenly, everyone starts to suspect everyone else. Someone remembers someone's petty quarrel with Anne from years ago. Someone else starts to inquire why a neighbor didn't come to the memorial march. Everything seems suspicious. On April 19th, a funeral takes place in a small church in Candé, along with a memorial service. At Didier's request, his wife's remains are buried in her wedding dress. The mourners perceive this gesture as a kind of metaphor for the fact that the husband is carrying the love of his life to the grave. Everyone is deeply moved. It is apparent, moreover, that Didier cannot recover from his wife's death, as a month and a half after the funeral he attempts suicide. Fortunately, he is rescued. Meanwhile, more test results are coming in, including the carbon dioxide content of Anne's blood. It turns out that the woman was already dead when her car was set on fire. When Didier finally recovers after his hospital stay, he promises Anne's parents that from now on, his main goal becomes finding his wife's murderer. The man also holds a huge grudge against the investigators, whom he accuses of failing to properly engage. Yes, the police officers have to admit that the investigation has stalled, but they consider the charges baseless and unfair. After all, a special committee of 10 officers has been working on Anne's murder case for some time. Refuting Didier's arguments, police officers also emphasize that the case is difficult in general. The car wreck and the corpse have been burned, there are few traces, and there is a long wait for test results. The results of the analysis of the stomach contents, for example, are still to come. No one expects that these are the ones that will cause a complete breakthrough in the investigation and lead to the discovery of the perpetrator of the crime. Analysis of the stomach contents reveals the presence of meat fibers, starch, the kind that is added to bread, and vegetable remains. This agrees with the information provided by Didier regarding dinner, but the man said, after all, that he had seen his wife eat breakfast. However, specialists are able to determine the degree of digestion of the food in the stomach, and this, in turn, allows the time of the victim's death to be determined with a very high degree of accuracy. It turns out that it occurred at the earliest 20 minutes after dinner, and at the latest 2 hours after dinner. Since the couple had dinner at 9 p.m., Anne died at 11 p.m. at the latest. Surely Didier could not have seen her alive the next morning, so why did he lie? Now investigators are focusing their attention on the widower. Didier Barbot is an exemplary citizen. He has never had a criminal record. No complaints have ever been filed against him. Everyone considers him a good and extremely hard-working farmer and holds him in high regard. As a result of the latest findings, police are analyzing Didier's phone call records. Now another surprise awaits the officers. While the man called his wife Anne exactly 64 times over the past year, it turns out that he made about 6,000 calls to another unknown number at the same time. Police determined that it was the number of a neighbor, Stephanie Livet. Stephanie and her husband Sebastian have been friends with Didier and Anne for 3 years. Police are analyzing the text messages that Didier and Stephanie sent to each other. They make it clear that they have had a well-kept secret affair for some time. In addition, it so happens that after Anne's death, they did not exchange any messages between them. Police are also analyzing Stephanie's phone login data. It comes to light that on the night of Anne's death, Stephanie's phone connected to the same mast as Anne's phone, and this corresponds to the area where the car wreck and corpse were found. On November 26, 2013, 8 months after the crime, Didier and Stephanie are arrested. This comes as a shock to the entire community, which does not believe the police's findings. Anne's parents don't believe in the reliability of the findings either. They are downright outraged and turn to the prosecutor's office by phone, stressing that they consider the arrest of their son-in-law a scandal. Didier, of course, also insists that this is absurd and denies it. However, after a 40-hour interrogation, he unexpectedly confesses to the crime and to an affair with Stephanie. He reports that he planned the murder together with his mistress. On Saturday morning at the appointed time, before Anne left for work herself, he went into the garage and turned off the electricity. He knew that by doing so, he would lure Anne, who would recognize it as a minor malfunction and want to fix it. That's what happened, and lurking in the corner, Didier hit Anne several times in the head with a piece of wood. Stephanie, who by agreement was waiting nearby, went inside at his signal. She was the one who noticed that Anne was still alive, although she was already unconscious. Didier then took the rope and strangled his wife. Later, they both put the corpse in the trunk of Anne's car. They cleaned up the garage, burned the wood with which he hit his wife, and the cloth that was used for cleaning. They took the corpse to the woods and set the car on fire. The shoe insert and checkbook were dropped off by Didier himself to make the robbery motive for Anne's kidnapping believable. The testimony of Stephanie, who was interviewed at the same time, confirms this course of events. Didier, when asked about the motive of the crime, refuses to answer. Stephanie, on the other hand, makes it clear. She separated from her husband Sebastian in early 2013, while Anne remained the only obstacle to new love. Besides, Anne was unable to give Didier a child. Yes, some time ago he had decided to adopt, but now he changed his mind. He no longer wanted to raise a stranger's child with Anne. He dreamed of his own. When it comes out that Anne's murderer is Didier, who for months pretended to be a loving husband and did everything to find his wife, his relatives, friends, and acquaintances even find it hard to believe. When the truth finally reaches them, they feel betrayed. The residents of Ritz and Candé also have a similar feeling. The trial of the pair of lovers begins on January 14, 2016, in a Nantes court, with the verdict coming as early as January 25th. The two are sentenced for murder. Didier Barbot to 30 years in prison, Stephanie Livet to 25 years. Both are serving their sentences in a prison in Bapaume, a small town in the Pas-de-Calais department. According to media reports, in January 2022, Didier and Stephanie got married in prison. If you like my stories and would like to support my work, please like and subscribe. Thank you in advance, and goodbye for now.